psychotherapist here in New York City, and today we are talking about the Enneagram 2 subtypes. I compel you to go watch the overview. I think the overview is kind of like a 101 course, and this is a 201 course. This is the deeper dive, and I love the subtypes. I feel like when I found the subtypes in my own life, I'm a 4, I realized right away that I was a sexual 4. And one of the things that really hit me was my anger. I've always had some burning anger in my life, and it's a bit more overt and loud, and when I get hurt, I feel anger first. And so it just keyed me into this other part of the Enneagram that I was otherwise unaware of, that narrowed down the type of 4 I was. And so what we're going to try to do is narrow down the type of 2 you are. And there's this thing called the counter type, which is different than the other 2. So often we will mistype. We'll type as another thing because we're unaware of the subtypes. Now, I have a video on the subtypes. It's an overview, a general overview of the subtypes, where I really go into how I perceive it and how I teach it. And I also talk about social stances and centers of intelligence in that video, which I think, again, narrow down what kind of 2 you might be. So go watch those. I think that they're really beneficial. And in this, I want you to watch all 3. I'm going to say that over and over again. We are all 3. We just have a dominant and a repressed, and then one stacked in the middle. And the goal is to help integrate them into our lives. I tell people when I found out what the subtypes were, and I started investigating it in my own life, it was as if I had been charged with this new movement towards figuring out layers and layers of myself that I otherwise only half knew. And I hope that happens for you. Now we're going to be looking at pride, that's your passion, and how you get in the way of yourself. I don't want to get into that now because I did it in the overview, but hopefully that overview will swing you right into this, and the 2 together will work in combination to help you heal and grow and understand yourself more. I know these are deep dives, they're long, and they're not for the faint of heart. I know it's easy to get bite-sized content these days, but I want you to sit with this and seep in this for a while with me and go on the long haul so that you can be more and more yourself. Again, my name is Drew, and I am hopefully here to help you understand things about yourself you didn't know you wanted to know. And I hope you go on this journey with me. If you need any individual work in therapy, coaching, whether long-term, short-term, one-time consultation, get in touch with me on my socials or on my website. And let's jump into this. I'm ready for the ride. I hope you are. Thanks for being with me. And I commend you for having the patience and resilience to devouring all this content. I usually like to start with the counter type. Now, I don't do this in every video that I do on counter types, but for this case, we are going to do that. Stick with the counter type first, because the counter type is usually the most confusing for people. It's where they don't often think that they are the number that they are. So in this case, the 2's counter type is the self-preserving 2. And they're a bit more concentrated on privilege, on getting, receiving, in a very tricky way. So what we like to say is that the counter type is counter-passional. So your passion is pride, or sin is pride. That idea that I know what's right for this other person, I have the answer, I can gain control of others and their emotions by having that awareness, and I can do all things. Don't expose my weakness. Don't expose where I'm flawed. I need to stay in a position where people need me so that I can feel secure. Well, the counter type is a bit more needy. That idea that privilege is about me first. So there's a higher level of fear of rejection that overrules this need to be looking a certain way for everybody and fill the needs of other people. The craving for love and the fear that I won't get it is pretty loud, and they'll go through some very creative ways to pull you in. They don't want to be esteemed necessarily as the helper. They seduce you to get their needs met indirectly. So if people saying no to them is too scary, they have to find a tricky way to lure you in without looking too needy or looking too irresponsible. What happens is they look a little young. That song by Alphaville, forever young, I want to be forever young. Yeah. This is that idea that if they stay young, we, in relationship with them, will be pulled into helping. Think about a child for a second. Just think about a child in your life, and when you're around them, there is, if you're healthy enough, a natural necessity towards taking care of their needs and trying to predict what their needs will be. It's almost an unconscious act of, I know in the room that I need to be protecting something. And what the countertype will do, the self-preserving two, is they will become childlike. The kid needs attention. The kid needs to be taken care of. The kid needs a parent. And it provokes a reaction in us to emotionally care for them. So becoming like the child, and it could be very subtle or a bit more overt, almost makes them look a bit helpless. This is where they push against the passion of pride. Now, of course, they can't stay young forever, but there is that part of them waiting to be taken care of. I didn't get the love I needed, and now there's an arrested development, a stuntedness. And I need to almost maintain this stuntedness. I don't want to give it up. It's scary to give up that childlike positioning, because then no one will come to my rescue. No one will give me the love. Like the other twos, they're using love and being loved by people as a strategy of survival. It's unconscious usually, right? Like, as you get more aware and you're watching these videos, you're going to become more and more conscious of when you do it. But the other types act a bit more independently. This type acts with a bit more dependency. Even their dress, their talk, their walk, their facial expressions, a lot of how they wear themselves and what they wear will kind of pull you in, because it has a bit of just a subtle childlike situation going on. But they don't want to work for love in the same way as the other two. Okay, you may notice they can be quite efficient at doing things for others because they are a two. But the reciprocal part that you'll have to play if you're on the other side of that is being a bit of a parent. And so what they'll do is there's a bit of a playful positioning. It could be really kind of warm and light and fun, and so you give me what I need, and even shy at times, but like a charming shy, a shy that says, come get me. I want to be taken care of, but I don't want to look too dependent. They don't also want to have you see that fear that I won't be loved. But obviously, this kind of positioning can prevent them from getting love from healthy people, because the people who gravitate towards that kid are maybe fulfilling the parent role that they're stuck in. So look for how your youth is revealed. Now, all three dominant types, the sexual, the self-preserving, and the social, wherever you stand, will have a little bit of this. And on the receiving end, maybe me as a 4, will feel a little bit of it in all of you. But for the dominant self-preserving 2, it's the loudest by far. They're a bit more irresponsible, playful, and indulgent. And people want to take care of kids. They just naturally do, So that instinct comes up in us. And when we see something charming and cute and youthful, we kind of like it, Now, the discerning types will kind of be resistant to it, resistant to taking care of that person because they don't want to take on that responsibility for that person. But so just as we wade into this, as we seep into this, think about, again, how that fun-loving, most likable in the room, irresistible component of you comes up. And are you actually getting your deep needs met from playing that role? Do you still want to be the kid? Or do you want to grow the hell up? Do you want your age, your actual age, to meet your emotional age? Whenever I have a new client come in, one of the first things I'm trying to figure out is what is their emotional age? How have they downgraded, leveled down in life to stay at a certain age? And how can they level up? How can they mature, grow, graduate certain systems of being and also certain seasons of life to get older? So I'll be gauging, how old do you feel? Do you feel 15 right now? Do you feel 32? Like, what's the age? Some people feel older than they actually are. They've taken on too much responsibility. Cool? So moving on with the countertype or the self-preserving two, let's concentrate a bit on what is this entitlement that they have. Now, in a sense, they might be considered, so we have the twos that seem to need love the most and are most deprived of love early on. At least that's their experience. And the self-preserving two is probably needing love at the highest level. So it's like a doubling down here. That fear of being rejected is really high. Love is in short order. I've got to make sure I get my fill. And don't I deserve it for what I've done? Now, if you cross them in a sense, or you do not serve them back, you can be punished. And that could be methodically shaming and guilting you. It can be harsher than that with words. You might have been on the receiving end of this. You might actually be someone who's just trying to figure out twos because you think you're in a relationship with a two, or your mom's a two, or dad's a two, or something along those lines. And this relentless guilt and pressure has been put on you that I've given to you and I better get. Think of the self-preserving two with the three wing. Oh my gosh, they know what you want. I can get it done too. I'm proficient. I have personality and I'm a pleaser. So they could be amicable and enjoyable to be around, and deft, sharp at knowing what you want. So this is where that entitlement comes in. We haven't gotten the attention we deserve in life. We're going to do some things. We don't even know if we want to do things because they can be resistant to even wanting to help, although it's habitual. They have to help to get these needs met. So they have a harder time trusting people and helping people out of abundance. They're often not filled up. So they're giving, but there's this kind of an ambivalent thing that's going on, which is, do I really want to help? Don't I really want to help? It's really the fear is producing that movement. And like all self-preserving types, they kind of know that giving costs. Giving is going to take energy. And that is something that they're constantly wrestling with. They are most synonymous with like that dysfunctional parent, specifically and stereotypically, it's the mother, the matriarch, the nurturer, the Italian mother, for example. This idea that they're always giving, always giving, always giving. I'm supportive, I'm caring, I'm helping you survive, but you better give back. And they will lord over you their doing. When they are unhealthy, there is this kind of like, don't you see what I've done? You better be in fidelity with me because I have served you. I've worked so hard, people. Can't you see? Can't you see what I've done here? Now, it's almost comical to watch when you really take an objective view. And as a therapist, the amount of clients I've had to help disengage from parents who have smothered them this way, who from the beginning said, this is transactional. Now, there was real love there usually, but the parent didn't know how to unconditionally give it. Their fear of being rejected was so loud that they had to create some kind of transaction for this child to be indebted to them. And now as an adult child, the child is still working hard to serve the needs of the parent. Do you know that within 3 weeks of a child being born, they're starting to notice how to serve the needs of a parent? It's crazy. It should be the switch, but they're noticing things going on and unconsciously. I mean, this isn't conscious to a baby, but they're unconsciously trying to do things to either tweak the parent, to get the parent to change a bit, or serving the need of the parent. But the self-preserving too can be pretty socially savvy and know how to find the way to pull you in. This is why they can host parties so well. Host big kind of dinners, you know. They know how to feed well. They know how to make you feel warm in the house, but they might be keeping account. And you may need to reciprocate. If they ask you to not reciprocate, they may be healthy. I recently was given a gift by a 4 or a 2, and I'm not sure what the stack is for that person, but they specifically asked for me not to give anything back. There was a movement towards health there of like, this doesn't need to be transactional. But if they are unhealthy, they kind of move to that low side, that unhealthy side of an 8, in which power and control and vengeance start to play in. Let's look a little bit at what they can, numbers they can be mistaken for. Specifically, the self-preserving 6. Okay. 2s are more concentrated on being liked and being in the relationship. For a 6, though, it's being friends with you so you don't attack them or hurt them. It's a bit different. The 6 is fearful in general. The 2 is fearful circumstantially. So the 2 isn't necessarily fearful you're going to attack them or hurt them, and that's why they need to be close to you. They're more fearful in certain situations, but more so they want to be liked. I also think self-preserving 4s can maybe sometimes be mistaken in this situation, because the self-preserving 4 is a long sufferer, and they suffer in silence and might kind of pull you in to have you help them a little bit. They don't want to ask directly for help, so they kind of suck you in. So that might be another position you want to look at, but we're all heart types, the 2s, 3s, and 4s. So we all want mirroring, validation, and affirmation. And so this is where we can kind of get mixed up a little bit. We're all kind of looking for approval, looking for you to notice us. You may at times think you are too selfish to be a 2, you self-preserving 2s, because you know that there is something you're looking for. But again, this is the counter type, so you can't think in the normal way a 2 would think. What you have to ask yourself is, am I image conscious? A 6 isn't. Not in the same way we are. I mean, we're all image conscious at some level, but 2s, 3s, and 4s are way more image conscious. So think about the ways in which you are image conscious. And that might help you narrow down if you are a 2 or a 6. The awareness of how people are viewing me. What's going on? Like, how am I experiencing your perception of me, and how will I play into it? How will I try to shift and change for you? I'm only valid if you affirm me. Who am I outside of that? That's more of a 2 thing. Okay, so we have to address the pride, but your ways you look at pride and handle pride are much different than the other 2. But it's still about being more than you are. It's still self-protective. It's still about meeting the needs of others so that they like you, so that you're pulling them in. It's just a roundabout way of doing it. It's a roundabout way of control. Okay? So we're going to move on to the other subtypes. But again, if you were watching this and you are primarily a self-preserving 2, watch the other 2 subtypes and learn how to integrate them in to become older. We're going to move right into the social 2s, and they look a bit older. And so we can actually learn from them and grow ourselves up by leaning a little into that social component of the 2. So as you watch that, think about how you can blend here a little bit to grow yourself up. All right, let's move on. All right, social 2s, we are going after you next. Not really, but you guys are maybe the most likely to show the pride, for the pride to be seen by others. We call you guys the diplomats or the ambassador. There's a number of names. Again, I try not to use too many names and let you pick that for you, what feels right. But there is a bit more social finesse, a bit more organized and strategic way in which you move with people. You know, you lead often from behind the scenes, but social 2s are pretty ambitious. It's interesting to me because I think a lot of people, when they think of 2s and 9s, for example, think that they don't work hard or that they're working hard in ways that aren't the same that others would, that are pretty obvious about career specifically. But the social 2 and the social 9 can very much be at the center of things in business. You know, the social 9 is considered the anchor. And you'll find them sitting in the middle of groups to kind of make sure the thing is navigating well. The social 2 might be working from behind the scenes, but they are angling to move up the ladder, be powerful, competent, influential, to stand out and be attractive. So even their fashion, what they wear, might be a bit more focused on drawing folks in and being seen a certain way. So that take charge part of them sometimes doesn't feel as obviously 2ish, but it is. Like I said, the pride could be most clearly seen because they seek to be with influencers and be an influencer. And sometimes they dupe themselves into believing that they are much more altruistic and benevolent than they are. To watch out for that. How much of this is manipulation to make yourself look good? And how much of this is giving because you're giving from a position of abundance? You're filled. So therefore you're giving out. And watch how much you're aligning and negotiating and angling for certain things. This isn't necessarily wrong. As a sexual 4, I am constantly looking for opportunities, connections, relationships to further my cause, further my purpose. The challenge for us is when we slip outside of being ourselves and shape shift to get things to serve this ego of ours. So you social 2s might look a little bit more like the 8 or the 3, a little bit more lusty, wanting, craving. Might be a little bit more of the bad 2. But that ambassador, diplomat, competent type, I like to say competent but compliant, because you are the compliant dependent types. But there is this competency that looks a bit more independent. Looks older, looks stronger. More of the leader type, taking charge. So like I said, they can look like a 3 or an 8, can be super ambitious. It's why a lot of 3s and 8s can get mixed up, or 3s and 2s can get mixed up. And you guys are sitting right next to each other. So there is a sharing that's already going on with the social 2 and the 3. But there is that desire for influence, power. And when you are generous, the follow through really is received by people and is pushing out. It isn't so self-serving. But when you are less healthy, it is about being indispensable and irresistible at some level. Let's lean into that 3 a bit. There is this look for who's the top dogs, how do I fit, a bit of workaholism. The pride, I said, is louder here. They have to be more protected of their weakness so that they aren't seen as flawed. So they could very much protect themselves strongly, protect the fortress of how I look to others. When they are healthy, there is a humility there. A bit more ability to laugh at yourself, a bit more to make a joke at your own expense, to talk about your weaknesses and not be so ashamed by them. Less about power and control, less about positioning, less about making sure you see me a certain way. Now, you might feel a bit lonely up top, because the social 2 will be giving a lot to get. They might feel very lonely and untaken care of, uncared for. When you're climbing the social ladder the way you guys can, it can put you in a position in which you get isolated from the rest of the group. But some of those qualities are, they can be very strong presenters. They can present the company well. They can influence the influencers. They can be seen as pretty competent. So that image of competency, remember, the 2s, 3s, and 4s are worried about image. Will I be accepted here? Will I be socially acknowledged and recognized? That will often for them trump the idea of intimacy, of being just connected, of being real with somebody. And therefore, they're avoiding their self. They're getting distracted from themselves with the idea of what should I do? And then they'll lose, who am I? When I'm so concentrated on my cause and you seeing me a certain way and targeting people to get that, you'll lose yourself a bit. And in this sense, I think that all 2s can become a bit anti-intellectual. They lose their emotion a bit, or they absorb in their emotion and their wants and desires, and it rules them, and the thinking gets shelved here. So I think social 2s have to watch out for that, because you are in environments in which thinking is prioritized usually. And if you get too emotional with that need, you might lose your sense of purpose in the environment. And being overly other-centered is always about low self-esteem. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to be in leadership when your self-esteem and it's the insecurities that you're dealing with are the reason you're pushing. To try to find your foothold. Where am I finding my foothold? Where am I finding my worth? And you'll get taken off of the course of purpose. But unlike self-preserving 2s, you guys look way more adultish, way more grown up. So you might lean more into your self-preserving 2 to just soften up some of the rigidity in competency, in presenting a command, presenting that part of you that has their shit together. Here is, I think, a good warning for you guys, relationally. Because you're so image conscious, so concentrated on that self-image, and I relate because I'm a 4. The 3 heart-centered folks deal with shame and deal with that image consciousness. How can I get people to see what's going on here and appreciate what's going on here? And we do it in different ways, 2s, 3s, and 4s. But one of the things that a social 2 will get stuck on is how I present, how I look, how people see me. So that self-image consciousness, which is different than the other 2, can lead you to really avoiding being exposed. And when you are exposed, which somebody might just be like, hey, this is a quirky thing about you. This is a cute thing about you. This is something I see in you. And if you get exposed, you might think it's a radical betrayal. This is where that pride's coming in, right? I have it together. You think you're more than you are. I can do all things. I can protect this image I've created. And when somebody criticizes or gives me feedback or even sees something as beautiful in me that I don't see in me, I see as a flaw, and breaking that image that I've worked so hard to establish, it can really come between relationships, work relationships, partnerships. I've been working so damn hard for this thing and you just outed me. And I've seen it ruin relationships when twos, especially social twos, are overprotective. They don't quite realize that being real and imperfect is endearing and desired by others. They don't want you to stay in that position of control all the time of their emotions and how they perceive you. When you show vulnerability, it actually gets us closer together. And it is part of the game of influence which social twos are trying to have. Instead of being this superhero, be somebody real. Now, I've seen also that social twos can use being real and self-revealing statements to primarily look better in people's eyes. It's like that shift trick. It's, oh, okay, now I'm going to share with you how I'm broken so I can pull you in. We have to look for it to be as authentic as possible. Now, of course, we can use that kind of, I do it all the time. I'll share with people on YouTube in these videos so that it allows me to look vulnerable and teach a lesson. But the goal for me is to teach a lesson. It isn't necessarily to get you to like me or respect me. So can you realize when your pride is moving towards control? And can you just be you without the heavy ambition? And not use these moments of self-revelation as a way to just suck people in. It's a hard game to play. I'm always trying to figure out what is in service of my agenda and what's in service of purpose. Sometimes my agenda is to be seen a certain way, but purpose is this thing that is beyond me. It's bigger than me. And so I might share for purpose's sake because it's beyond me. And sometimes I'm sharing for agenda's sake, and that's about me. That's my ego talking. So just be careful, social twos, when playing that game there. And you have to practice to get it right. You can't just get it right away. That's the beauty of this. All right, we're going to move on to the sexual one-on-one type. But like I've said for the other types, we're learning all three together because you are all three. So don't disregard those other two. They must be integrated if this is your dominant. If it's your repressed, the social's your repressed, learn how to infuse it into your life a bit more. Practice it. Cool? All right. Save this part for the end. And one of the reasons is because sometimes the sexual 4, my type, and the sexual 2 can be mixed up a little bit. You know, people might think that they're a sexual 2 or a sexual 4 because there is some overlapping here. Also, I saved it for the end because sometimes I could be a little afraid of you sexual 2s. You guys can be very vindictive at times. And so I just wanted to get out of town after I do this. What we call the sexual 2 or the one-on-one 2 is the intimate 2 or the seducer. They have seductiveness on their mind. They are considered kind of the classic seducer. Intense, aggressiveness, love affairs, going all in. And if you do not respond in kind, if you don't give me what I'm giving you, there's resentment playing out. There's hostility playing out. Okay, so that's there. And as you sexual twos are listening, just think about how loud that can be and how much you've monitored it over time. How well do you gauge the anger that's within you for not getting what you want? Now, as a sexual four, I have a very similar mentality. When I'm hurt, my natural inclination is to get angry first. And think about how you are not doing what you need to do in the relationship. And again, this is where we can get mixed up a bit. What you twos will do, though, is morph and transform a bit into the relationship and with the person, specifically this other person, whether it's a friend or a lover or a husband, wife, whatever. You can lose your true self in this relationship by forming and grafting on to that other person. And so much energy is expended on the other. So much juice given to them. So you guys can get devastated in ways other twos don't. Not wholesale, because all twos kind of love a bit. And again, we're all three. So the sexual component's in all three of the twos. But I think that the sexual two can get hurt the most, devastated by love not going the right way for them. Juiced and jazzed when it's working, devastated when it's not. And then they have to ask the question of themselves, who the fuck am I? I just gave myself to this person. I just wrapped myself in this relationship. Now I have to find myself again. And who am I really if I'm not with somebody? It's a tough thing to go and look for when you're broken. So you guys will look a bit more emotional than the other twos. And that hostility will be a bit louder, That lover, the romanticizer. Am I truly lovable? Am I unworthy of appropriate attention and care and love? And when that's always on your mind, you're going to fall in love with love. You're going to run into love constantly. Who's the next person? How can I get what I need? So you'll see them. They can work the room a bit. Work the room a bit different than the social two. The social two can work the room too. But the seductive part of the sexual two in a room, you feel, quite frankly, you might feel like you want to have relations with them. If you're not really in touch with yourself, you might get caught up in that seduction if you are on the other side. They're a bit more openly friendly and not shy, like the self-preserving two. So they express that positive attention, and it often can be sexualized. Not always, obviously. The healthier you get, the less it needs to be sexualized. And in this, the person on the other side can get pulled in pretty easily if they are vulnerable. So you sexual twos have to yield your sword, swing your sword appropriately. There's kind of some sexual metaphor in that as well, but just be careful of how you are pulling people in. When you saturate yourself in the life of a partner, this one other person, you just saturate and simmer and just let all the juices sink into you. And also at the same time, you're creating a dependency in them on you. It can lead towards disaster. And this is where I said before, there's a bit of a fear I have with a sexual two. And maybe it's because I know the anger and hostility I could have as a sexual four, that, for all us sexual types, it's hard for us to have people say no, have people not give back to us. And there's a part of us that says to them, especially when it's romantic, fuck off or fuck me. And it's confusing for that other person because it's so extreme. And I think for the social two and the social four, this is where we have a bit of that, we can really create some fear in people because we're the emotional types. We're that 2, 3, 4 combo. We know how emotions work. We're watching the emotions in others. We're seeing how they operate. And when we get hurt, we can use that against them. Sexual fours are a bit better at this because that's their whole game. It's my whole game, is understanding the emotions of others. Because you guys can sometimes be asleep to your emotions in that sense, that you don't navigate the internal subterranean region of your own self and learn yourself, you can miss a lot of the emotional situations that are going on. But we all, the sexual fours and the sexual twos, can bulldoze and bury. We can hit and run. We can trample and trounce. That vengeance and hostility can be very loud. We both kind of move towards that low side of 8 and dominate. So when you think the world is against you and then therefore you need to control more, just maybe take a step back and think, is this the best way to go about it? Do I need to guilt this person to continue to be in this relationship? You know? Do I have to say, I'm nothing without you? Do I have to have these grand gestures towards them? Or you are the worst? You know, this obsession with the relationship. You give me worth if we are okay. If I can seduce you well. It's dangerous. With all sexual types, there is a pursuit of the exalted moment. I know this is a sexual four, like even in music, anthems, a crescendo, music moving towards this high, or something that I'm always looking for. I got into a new singer yesterday, and clearly my favorite song right away is this song that just moves towards a crescendo. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the juices inside me kind of go. And that's what a sexual two could be doing in relationships. And they can even use sex as a drawbridge. You know, like it goes down when we're okay, and it comes back up when we're not okay. And there's a punishment aspect in it. I'll use this thing to get you to abide by the rules. So there is this immersive nature, intimacy that's all in. And then conversely and confoundly for the other person, it can just go away because you've done something wrong. So I'll say this too, and I found this to be pretty true. Even with sex, it can be so good that it keeps somebody around longer than they need to be around on the receiving end. The person in relationship with the sexual two might stay longer than they normally would because this passion is so good. It compensates for all the bullshit that I have to deal with, and the fighting and the arguing and the intensity. When you're emphasizing personality and appeal that much and have to rely on it to feel secure, there is a lot of turbulence that can happen in that when you are unhealthy. To get things from other people. That emotion, the passion, and all of that thing that happens starts creating border blurriness. Who am I and who are you? And we've now blended together and we're enmeshed. And that enmeshment, that two becoming one, is not so healthy here because I'm losing myself in it. You know, you could see how the sexual two can sometimes be the most manipulative of the twos. And you can mooch on the other side. As somebody in a relationship with a sexual two, you can mooch off of them for a long period of time. Because they get so caught up in the relationship that you can get a lot of your needs served with this person who's so emotional. So I've seen very either stoic or resilient, composed people with sexual twos and learn how to play the chords a bit. So they get a lot of their needs met. And they take advantage of the sexual two who's thrown themselves totally into this. Sexual 2 is often asking themselves, what does it take to get this person hooked? And when they hook somebody, they want to keep it. They work so hard for it. But they often feel like they don't have power. So when they feel weakest and most insecure, that's where they can try to dominate. Power and control. I'll put you in your place. I'll tell you what you've done wrong. I hate you, but I love you. I hate you, but you're everything. I've done so much for you. So watch for those exalted moments and what they will compromise in you. And on the other side, watch for those exalted moments and how they'll be used by you when you're with a sexual 2. Here's like an interesting component I've seen, and this isn't to be crude, but I often think sexual 2s are the most likely to get upset when their partner doesn't climax, or when their partner can't get it up, or when their partner doesn't feel like having sex with them. They can really diminish that other person. They'll call out, you're not a man, or you're not sexually desirable, can't you get it up? Because it's such an assault on their personhood. And when a person is screwing them well, they feel so much worth. To be sexually desired is to be loved. But at the same time, I give, so I should get. There will be a price to pay. This usually does not go as planned, does it? It usually gets really messy because we're so flawed. Just for you sexual 2s, look for some relationships with your parents. Maybe you had a reserved, unexpressive dad, for example. That might be something that resonates, but look for what in your past might necessitate this strong move to really wrap yourself in somebody. It might be what you hoped and wish you had gotten. Somebody more engaged, more wrapped up in you. Okay? It's a tough thing to look at these old narratives and attach them to how we move today in the world. But often the confused kid is now becoming the voracious, sexually desirable adult because they didn't get something back there. So there's part of you guys that I really relate to as the sexual 4. There's a part of me that loves to seduce, that loves to draw somebody in, and it's not usually the best part of me when it is untethered to my being aware of myself. When I lose that, when I'm not present to self in a moment, that thing can be too loud and the image becomes too desperate. You have to watch out for that desperation, guys. All right, those were the 3 parts. Let me conclude here and hope that you watched all 3 because, again, all 3 are so important to us being a well-rounded person. That's it, folks. Again, I can't be more repetitive. Watch all 3. We are all 3. We're stacked. The healthier we get, the more they close down and they work together. And then it starts to look like this, where sometimes we don't know which one is dominant, which one's repressed, because they are really working together. I think that we tend to always have one that's our strong suit, the thing that we lean in most, that we don't become fully blended and evened out, but we're moving towards that integration. Again, my name is Drew, and if you want to work individually or some long-term, some short-term stuff, just reach out to me on the socials or on my website, and we'll set something up. Otherwise, as always, it's been a good time together. I'm appreciative that you took this deep dive if you've got this far, because this is hard stuff to hear, but it does set up how I end up every session, which is I say everything is yet to be done. Everything, in the words of Rainer Marie Rilke, And that Rilke quote is so powerful because it says that there is a lifetime ahead of us in which we can use the work that we're doing now to enhance our future. So if you are new to this and it feels overwhelming, just know everything is yet to be done. Everything. All right, guys, have a good one. Thanks for being with me.